Then all of a sudden. Und damit begrüße ich euch herzlich zurück zu Let's Play Corpse Party. In der letzten Folge hat Yui den Stift von Tsukasa leider vergessen in der Schule. Heißt, wir sind jetzt hier ganz alleine. Und die alte Frau, falls ihr euch an die erinnert, ja, die verfolgt sie in ihren Gedanken immer noch. Ist das Musik? I heard a faint noise as of someone playing an organ.
空耳だよね。そうに決まってるよ。こんな時間に音楽室で楽器を鳴らす人なんているわけないし。
So wahrscheinlich wie es ist, dass jemand zurück in die Schule kommt, einen extra Stift zu holen. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. It was probably the sound of the rain, wind and thunder mixing together. It just sounded like an organ, that's all. I was convinced. I kept walking. But then I heard the same noise again, this time much more clearly. It was unmistakable.
嘘。やだ。
I was paralyzed with fear. My heart was pounding as if it were struggling to break free of someone's sinister grip.
きっとまだ吹奏楽部の子とか先生が残って弾いてるんだよね。そうだ。そうに決まってるよ。
Thinking about it, I vaguely recalled someone mentioning an upcoming performance by the Wind Instrument Club. I guess an organ would be qualify. Somebody must have stayed late to practice. That's all.
何でもかんでも怖い話に直結させちゃいけないな。
I took another deep breath and tried, again, to calm my overly jittery nerves.
怖いと思ったら何でも怖く思えるものだよね。
Das ist richtig, ja. I'd heard that if you let your imagination run too wild, fear can even make you see things that aren't there. And my imagination was most definitely running wild.
あとちょっとで教室だから走っていこう。
I decided to dash toward my classroom so I could get out of this hall as quickly as possible. Finally reaching the familiar door, I swiftly opened it and flicked on the lights.
やっとたどり着いた。あとはペンケースを忘れないようにしなくちゃ。
Ja, also ich glaube, dann würde ich mir Sorgen machen, würdest du das echt tun. Thanks to all my unexpected pauses to freak out over thunder and lightning, it took me far longer than it should have to get here. It was already well past 7.
7時か。
It was the appointed time when the ghost of a teacher was supposed to appear, at least, according to the school legend.
何もないじゃない。
I let out a sigh of relief and relaxed my shoulders a bit. The lights were on both inside the classroom and out in the hallway. Sure, it was still dead silent, but the fear I'd been feeling had completely melted away.
全然怖くないよ。やっぱり七不思議だなんて嘘だったんだな。
I grabbed the pen case I'd come back for and shoved it into my pocket.
よし、これで任務完了だね。
With my long ordeal behind me, more or less, I looked around the classroom and let out another sigh. I'd only ever known this classroom when it was bustling with activity and thus found its eerie silence and utter stillness to be oddly fascinating.
教室に私一人ってなんだか不思議な感じがするな。
I got the idea in my head to try doing something I normally wouldn't be able to, like standing at the teacher's podium and writing on the blackboard.
こんなシチュエーションめったにないし。
Naja, wenn du selber Lehrerin wirst, was sie ja jetzt wurde, dann oft genug. To me, the area behind that podium from which teachers conduct their lessons was like a sacred space. I dreamed of standing there myself one day and could hardly resist its pull when presented with a rare opportunity like this.
今なら誰も見てないし。
To my classmates, there would seem like such a this would seem like such a silly, stupid dilemma, but that didn't change the way I felt at that moment.
どうしようかな。
Ach, warum eigentlich nicht?
よし、少しだけ先生の気分を味わっちゃえ。
I decided I'd had to try it. During daily cleanup and such, I'd come and gone from the spot countless times, but this was the first time I'd ever had an opportunity to just stand here and preside over the classroom.
そうか。先生からはこんな風に見えるんだ。教室って。
Ach ja.
なんかちょっとドキドキする。
Gaining a teacher's point of view, in the most literal sense, was starting to get me really fired up. It may seem silly now, but this was my stage. This was where all my dreams would play out.
私もいつか。
I began to imagine the future that awaited me. Painstakingly detailing some new pieces of knowledge for students sitting attentively at their desks. Gliding chalk across the board, filling it with information to aid them in their studies.
いつか先生になれるといいな。
I was getting so excited that even I began to think my behavior was a little strange. Maybe it was just the juxtaposition, keine Ahnung, of these joyous-freeing visions and the prickling dread I've been feeling up until just a minute or two before. But then, in the blink of an eye, one of these two conflicting emotions completely overpowered the other. Suddenly, my surroundings were bathed in darkness. Going stiff with shock, I stumbled back a step. My back struck the blackboard with a dull thud.
いきなり何？
I instinctively grabbed hold of the rail where the eraser sat. I felt chalk dust against my fingertips. My panicked heartbeat was making it difficult to breathe. Was this caused by the thunderstorm? If so, it sure picked a fine time to turn the lights out on me.
しかもオルガンの音まだ響いてる。嘘なんで？停電になってるならオルガンだって鳴らないはずなのに。
Oh.
行くな！
Was this what the old woman was trying to warn me about? That's impossible. She was no fortune teller or psychic as far as I was aware. How could she possibly have known this would happen? Hell, even if she were a fortune teller or a psychic, predicting the future is the stuff of science fiction. I shook my head.
落ち着くのよ、私。音楽室の方はまだ停電になってないとか、きっとそんな理由だよ。
I curled my chalk-dusted fingers into a fist and silently tried to talk some sense into myself.
ともかく早く校舎を出よう。
I shouldn't have been playing teacher. I should have been in and out by now. Cursing myself a little, I fumbled my way through the darkened classroom. Ouch. I'd spent so much time here, you'd think I'd be able to find my way out of it with my eyes closed, as if where. But sadly, that wasn't the case. Smashing loudly into a desk, I knocked it on its side and began tumbling after it, instinctively grabbing at other desks around me for support.
いけない。机の中身まき散らしちゃったよ。元に戻さなくちゃ。
Still fumbling around blindly, I gathered up all the scattered notes, textbooks, and writing utensils.
でも暗くて何がなんだか。もう何やってるのよ、急いでるのに。本当にドジなんだから。
I let out a sigh. I seem to be doing that a lot lately.
これは教科書とノートでしょ?
Also ich würde jetzt an ihrer Stelle eigentlich einfach abhauen. I was trying to take inventory of all the things I'd knocked out of the desk, then realized why. I might as well just stand it up and stuff it all back in.
さすがに全部を間違いなく元に戻すのは無理だな。明日ここの席の子に謝らなくちゃ。
Yeah. Not that that was a particularly pleasant prospect. Explaining what I'd done wouldn't be easy, and no matter how I sugarcoated it, it would serve as a clear indication of my clumsiness. If I didn't say anything, it's not like I'd be found out, but that would be the same as lying as far as I'm concerned, and I could do that.
これで最後かな?
If I didn't say nee, Quatsch. I placed my hand against the floor and swept it around, feeling for anything I might have missed. And I found something. All right.
やだ。何これ?
What
なんだかぬるぬるして。
I clearly brushed my fingers across something, but I had no idea what. It was no notebook or writing implement though, that's for sure.
机の中からなんでブニュブニュしたものが?
Maybe it had been on the floor all along.
なんだろうこれ.
Oh god. I rubbed my sticky fingertips a bit deeper into the wet spot, then brought my hand up close to my face so I could get a better look at what was there. What on earth did I just touch? There was a flash of lightning almost immediately joined by a roaring thunderclap. And with it, for a split second, the pitch-black classroom was lit up brightly as day. Boah, Alter! I shot to my feet, utterly mortified. In that split second, I'd gotten a very good look at my fingers, and it really did seem as if they were covered in blood. But it wasn't just my hand. No, if my peripheral vision were to be trusted, it looked like the entire classroom was stained a deep, dark crimson.
そういえば、なんとなく生臭い気がする。
Without thinking, I backed away from where I'd been crouching. I tried rationalizing what I saw. How could a whole classroom become a bloodbath like this? Did something spill? Did someone stumble in here injured?
ありえない。そんな、何よこれ!
My whole body was quaking. I fled from the classroom. Or rather, I tried to flee.
開かない!やだ!鍵なんてかかってなかったのに。今だって鍵はかかってないよ。それなのに、どうし...
Scheiße. I pulled on the door handle again and again in a frenzy. I was pulling so hard it felt like my fingernails might tear loose. But it just won't budge.
なんで?
I was absentmindly grabbing at my hair with one hand and slammed my fist. At my hair with one hand, okay, and slammed my fist on a nearby desk with the other. This was a nightmare. Tja, jetzt mal auf die alte Dame gehört. Silence saturated the inky blackness of the room. I took several deep breaths in an effort to restrain my pounding heart.
とにかく一度落ち着かないと。そもそもドアが開かないのだって私がこんなにパニックになってるせいかもしれないし。 さっきの変な塊だってきっと何かの勘違いだよ。だってありえないじゃない、教室にあんなわけのわからないものが落ちてるだなんて。
I was certain that when I saw what it actually was, come morning, it'd end up being something totally random, like someone's old soda-stained gym clothes.
きっとそうだよ。そうだ、指についたのだって美術に使う絵の具かもしれないじゃない。
My imagination was just running wild because I was panicking.
もしかしたらドアに何かが挟まってて開かないだけかもしれない。
I decided to check out that hypothesis by feeling my way across the door and determining if anything was jutting out from any of the cracks.
ダメだ、真っ暗で何にも見えない。
I fumbled around the gaps in the door, but I just couldn't make anything out that way.
他の出口は。
No, this was the third floor. I couldn't get out of here without exiting into the hallway.
今すぐ外に出たいのに。
Still at a loss, I noticed a sudden flash of light through the hallway window. But the glass was only translucent, so I couldn't be sure of its source.
誰か歩いてくる。
Die Lehrerin? Then there came the distinctive clump, clump, clump of footsteps.
そうだ、きっと用務員さんだ。
I recalled the existence of a custodian who always patrolled the school grounds. I'm sure he was probably taking a look around after the sudden power outrage.
助かった。
All at once, my fear-addled legs regained their strength. This nightmare would be over soon.
すみません。
I shouted to the custodian at the top of my lungs through the window.
すみません、閉じ込められてるんです。
I had to be sure he heard me. I shouted again. Finally, I could see the light out in the hallway again, and it seemed to be getting closer. However,
なんかこの光おかしい気がする。
perturbed, I took a step away from the window.
懐中電灯だったらもっと明るいよね。
Like the faint, unearthly glow classically attributed to spirits, was what I was thinking. I tried to stop myself from finishing that thought, however. Dullness aside, it also looked like it was wriggling around in a very unnatural, very unflashlight-like way.
それにこの足音。
Clump, 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 clump. 4 clumps. Then a 3 or so second interval. Then another 4 clumps. They were sounding in a fixed rhythm.
用務員さんじゃない。明らかに変な歩き方。
Und du hast es auf dich aufmerksam gemacht. The fear was back, in full force. I had to find somewhere to hide. What if I'd accidentally summoned something inhuman? I mean, whatever it was, I begged it for help. I literally invited it in.
どこか隠れるところ。そうだ。
Da kann man sich drin verstecken. Oh je. Kann ich hier speichern? Ich kann hier speichern, das ist schon mal gut. Ich finde es so offensichtlich, wenn sich da jemand drin versteckt. Wir nehmen mal das Teacher's Podium. I hurriedly hid myself beneath the teacher's podium. I grabbed my knees, curled up and made myself as small as I could.
なんなの？一体どうなってるの？
The footsteps continued to draw nearer, nearer and nearer. Little by little, the sound grew louder. every hair on my body was standing on end.
このまま通り過ぎてください。お願いします。
I held my breath, clasped my hand together, and silently prayed. They were close now. Very, very close.
神様!
Why was this happening? I couldn't make any sense of it. I just wanted it to be over. I prayed to God that it would end. Was this what the old woman was trying to warn me about? Was this all happening because I ignored her? Because I didn't take the paper doll from her? Was it because I'd heard the ghost story of Yoshi and allowed it to get to me? Or did the strange events of the day have nothing to do with what's happening to me now?
口から心臓が飛び出しちゃいそうだよ。
I was still holding my breath. I didn't dare let even the tiniest of sounds escape and give away my position. Oh Gott, ey, das ist richtig fies gemacht gerade. Oh, hört auf, ey. Oh, bitte, ey. The consistent rhythm of the footsteps suddenly ended halfway into one of its cycles. Oh, es wird doch gewiss irgendwas kommen, was mir jetzt ins Gesicht springt. And it had ended right in front of this very classroom. I had goosebumps up and down my arms and legs. I stopped praying and clasped my hand over my mouth. I knew I'd scream if I didn't. Could this be Yoshi? Was the school legend real? Oh Mann. Oh nein. All I could do was close my eyes, keep my mouth shut, and hope that whoever or whatever this was would just go away. But the footstep sounds didn't start again. If this was indeed Yoshi, then she'd stop in front of the classroom and was just standing there. Oh Gott, ich will da gar nicht hingucken. I had no concept of time anymore. I stayed in my hiding spot for what was probably only a few minutes, but it felt like at least an hour.
足音が消えた。
Maybe whoever it was is gone. I decided to carefully peek out from under the podium. I gingerly edged my head out, just far enough to get a glimpse of the room. Nein, when suddenly... Oh, fies! The footsteps rang out once more. It sounded like they were heading right for me, and they might have been inside the room. I honestly couldn't tell. I scrambled back into my hiding spot and covered my mouth with both hands. Oh, ist das fies! This was too much for me. My breathing was coarse and erratic, and my face was a mess of tears and snot.
神様、助けて!
I was inconsolable. The footsteps just wouldn't stop. What on earth were they doing? It almost seemed like they were running around in circles, just to scare me. Oh Gott, bitte, hört auf, das ist richtig grässlich grad. I mouthed these words over and over again and moved my hands to my ears in a vain attempt to block out this torturous sound. And as if in response, the sound changed. It was a loud, dull thud followed by silence. No more footsteps. I'd heard that sound hundreds of times before. It was the classroom door sliding open. I peeked out, but the door was still tightly shut. How could that be? If the sound I heard wasn't The door. Then what was it? Oh, bitte, ey, können wir bitte damit aufhören? Kann ich nicht einfach jetzt bitte einmal erschreckt werden und dann ist alles vorbei? What little safety I'd felt here was pretty much gone. But to be fair, I wasn't absolutely certain the spirit had seen or heard me either. The prospect of stepping out into the open wasn't a desirable one, but I had to decide if it was better to stay here, where I was, or to make a break for it. Oh, scheiße, ey. Wisst ihr was, dann speichere ich hier auch nochmal. Oh Gott. Make a breath, stay hidden. Ich glaube, wir verstecken uns weiterhin. Oops, but it only took a moment for that decision to come back and bite me. My body was suddenly weighed down in an instant without knowing what was happening. My featherly positioned form was essentially locked in place. It was like a boulder had fallen on top of me and was resting on my arched back. I twisted and shuffled myself around, trying to shake it off, but the more I struggled, the heavier it became. And what's more, it felt like it was slowly inching its way up toward my head, as if it were planning on dropping down in front of my face. Was this a person? Oh! It was a female voice, reverberating ominously, as if bubbling up from the depths of hell. I squirmed violently, desperate to throw her off of me.
皆さんで追いかけっこしましょうか。
Whoa! My vision went red, or at least it felt that way. Whoever was on my back had dug her razor-sharp fingernails right into my eyes. I collapsed on the spot. The pain was instantaneous and unbearable. I could no longer hold my position. I could no longer focus on anything but this agony. The pain shot through my head in waves. It was indescribable, unthinkable. I couldn't take it any longer. My consciousness faded, and I was gone. I would never know exactly what had happened to me, but maybe I was better off that way. Und das war das Wrong End. Immerhin bin ich froh, dass... Alter, das war mal eine richtig, richtig fiese Stelle. Ganz ehrlich. Das war so fies. Drittes Wrong End. Ja, ich gehe mal davon aus, dass ich ein anderes Wrong End hätte ich mich für den Schrank entschieden. Ich denke mal, das wäre dann... Wobei, wo kommt dann mein zweites Ende? Ich konnte bleiben, ich konnte den Schrank... Also wenn ihr wollt, kann ich natürlich einmal... Klar, hier weiterspielen oder ich spiele hier weiter. Heißt, ich breche einmal aus. Wie ihr möchtet, das könnt ihr mir einfach in die Kommentare schreiben. Ich muss sagen, das war echt geil gemacht. Das war richtig geil. Nicht schlecht, nicht schlecht. Gut, Leute, das war's für heute mit Let's Play Corpse Party. Ihr sagt mir, wie es in der nächsten Folge weitergeht. Und ja, dann würde ich auch sagen, bis zur nächsten Folge.